Hello and welcome to the June 11th edition of The Hash. I'm Zack Seward. I'm joined today by Jen Sanasie, Brady Dale, and David Morris. We're going to talk about the day in crypto news. And starting us off on this lovely Friday is Brady Dale. Take it away.
So Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter and Square as it happens, but Twitter's a relevant one here, said last night on Twitter that it was only a matter of time before we see the Bitcoin Lightning Network integrated with Twitter. A couple of quick things to note here. There is Jack Dorsey is an investor in Lightning Labs, which is run by Elizabeth Stark. They're obviously big leaders in this space. They do the L&D implementation. There's also the C Lightning implementation over at Blockstream. And then also, Dorsey said pretty much the same thing a couple years ago about the Cash App at Square. In 2019, Lee Quinn did a story on that at CoinDesk, and that still hasn't happened. So a matter of time, the time keeps extending out. But still, this raises possibilities at Twitter. They've been doing a lot more to empower creators, and if you can put money into that empowerment, that might be nice for people. David, I know we were chatting beforehand. This was interesting to you. What's your response to this news?
Yeah, thanks, Brady. And by the way, I like the quarantine facial hair. I'm excited by this. I think that there's going to be big problems. That's sort of a vague tweet, and there are obviously legal issues probably. But tipping online, payments online, integrating it into Twitter. Twitter has a lot of headspace in terms of adding new features, and they have accelerated that recently. So there's definitely reason to take this seriously. And Jack has proven himself a serious, committed advocate for this technology. And so I think that, the big bottom line is always adoption and usability from a, noob standpoint, right? So this would be a great on-ramp for people who maybe are not super familiar with the technology. Presumably Twitter will build it in a way that's easy to use.
And just
Jen, you want to jump
really
in?
quick. Well, one quick note there, just off of what you said, it should be worth noting that they just added a tipping feature that's available to some users, and so that would be an easy to build in there. Yeah, Jen, I know you had a thought.
Yeah, well, I think that this is just one use case that shows how transitioning from Web 2 to Web 3 is just amazing for content creators. I think there's so much opportunity for creators to not only make money off of their content, but to also prove ownership and get credit for their content as we see some of these applications roll out. So this is really interesting. Zack, I wanted to throw this down to you because it reminded me of the tweet that you were trying to sell. I believe you were trying to do that on Cent. And so when we think about that, like what do you think of this story? Do you think it's just going to be easier to, do you think people are going to be selling tweets back and forth, I guess is what I'm asking.
I don't know, man. That'd be a pretty crazy native application that Twitter would add. This is one of those payments use cases that we keep seeing coming back, right? We're trying to make payments on Bitcoin work. I just don't know if there's a ton of interest in doing that, right? I think sort of the asset narrative as opposed to the means of exchange narrative is really sort of sealed the deal on the Bitcoin investors. So, even if this was native to Twitter, which a lot of people who hold crypto assets use dearly and every day, I'd be curious to see if this was ultimately used that much. But it could be certainly a cool feature. Brady, as you mentioned, Twitter is kind of interestingly investing in what you could think of as a publishing stack from Twitter Spaces. They bought Review. If this were to be sort of the financialization of those things, I think it could be really interesting. And of course, they have the network effect, which is a big thing in crypto, right? Where the people you want to be where the people are. So if you can bring it to where the people are, hey, maybe it'll work. But it's still TBD in terms of when we would see this happen.
And it's important context here. Jen mentioned Web3. Twitter, we don't hear a ton about it, but they do have in the background this Blue Sky program, this plan to completely decentralize the whole application. And so Jack could be saying it's a matter of time. You can use Lightning easily on the platform once we've decentralized it using Blue Sky, if you really believe that that's going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, the Blue Sky thing, it remains interesting, right? It's like you can have your there's all these sort of different versions of Twitter that you could have for yourself, right? And so if this became an aspect of some version of Twitter that was very reliant on payments, peer-to-peer payments, then yeah, you would certainly want this on the Lightning Network. I mean, I think the Lightning Network, I mean, you bring up Web3, Brady, and I'll toss this back to you, but the Lightning Network really remains fairly small sort of in the Web3 picture, right? It's not as widely used as some of these DeFi protocols that function differently, but in some respects are similar. So yeah, I'll toss that back to you for your take as we sort of scan the DeFi Pulse rankings here.
Yeah, it's number 41 on DeFi Pulse. There's $58 million in the Lightning Network. There's way more Bitcoin on Ethereum than there is on the Bitcoin Lightning Network. Now, some decent news this week. El Salvador has just made Bitcoin legal tender. They plan to use Jack Mallers' technology to run that over the Lightning Network. Maybe a lot more payments start getting made, at least in one part of the world, and that makes Bitcoin a bit more of a payments use case as well. Who knows? It's very speculative, but at the very least, you could imagine that might make the Lightning Network become, a little bit more active and a little bit more popular, at least in one part of the world. I mean, Jen, I don't know. Do you think? Sorry, go ahead. David, you were hopping in.
Brady. I'm not intimately familiar with the sort of technical stack. What about sort of throughput? How much volume can Lightning handle if, for example, Twitter was going to adopt it?
I don't think we really have a great picture on that because people just aren't using it very much. I know it's been pretty buggy so far. I haven't done a ton of reporting on this. My guess, though, is if Twitter were going to kick it in, they would just set up a bunch of nodes around the world, maybe in collaboration with some other company that has like $50 million worth of Bitcoin, Jack's other company. So my guess is they would sort of work on making that happen. Yeah, you can see on the screen here, we've got some data up about what's going on with the Lightning Network. As you can see at the top of the screen, the number of nodes have been steadily increasing. Each node has a certain amount of Bitcoin on it that makes it possible to move things around. Obviously, if a lot more people want to use this, you can make a little money running a node. People will be motivated to add more nodes if it actually becomes a going concern. And it going on Twitter could make it a going concern. Tips in Bitcoin could help make it a going concern. Combine that with El Salvador, maybe Lightning really starts to become real.
Brady, we're talking about platforms like Twitter making things easier for the mainstream audience to participate in DeFi and some of these Web3 applications that we're talking about. Do you think it's important for creators who maybe don't understand the space to understand the Lightning Network and how it works, or do we just need to wait for companies like Twitter to launch features, I guess, that are just easy to use and participate in them, and we don't really need to know what's going on in the background?
I mean, I think folks who show any sign of any sort of crypto audience being interested in them should try to open up to it as quickly as possible, just because sometimes, people are enthusiastic about supporting people in that way. There was the funny story on YouTube last year about a woman, a big YouTuber, who had been given 1 Bitcoin years ago and kind of forgot about it, but it was still in her Coinbase account. And she found it last year and was like, holy cow, it's worth $40,000. I mean, that's a small amount of money for her, but I think she ended up giving it away. But still, that's a sign that it doesn't hurt to be open to those kinds of payments.
Cool. Let's change gears. We'll stay sort of in the realm of payments back-end stuff, and we'll talk about Binance. So something is going on at Binance. Binance, which had been served by Silvergate Bank, which is one of the crypto-friendly banks in the sector that serve crypto companies openly. Silvergate has discontinued Binance withdrawals and deposits. Now, this was circulating on Twitter. It originated from a Reddit post yesterday. CoinDesk was able to confirm the veracity of this email communication that was sent out to Binance customers, but it suggests that something might be going on with Binance right now as it relates to their banking partners and providers. I'm going to kick this to David. I think you were kind of tracking this story. It was interesting to see this one unfold over the course of yesterday, going from sort of unsubstantiated rumors to, okay, actually this is something. We don't know exactly what caused it. We do know, according to a Bloomberg report a couple weeks ago, that Binance may be under investigation by U.S. authorities, which may or may not be involved in what's going on here. But it's interesting, and it might portend some more stuff in the pipeline for Binance in a bad way. So, David, what do you read here? What does this say about the state of both the crypto banking sector and what may or may not be going on at Binance right now?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because for those of us who have been around for a while, there was, the period of, I don't know, 2012 to 2018, where there were all of these international exchanges that were sort of willy-nilly serving US customers and using various workarounds to get banking, including shadow banking, including Crypto Capital Corp, which was allegedly using some of that capital to launder drug funds and other stuff. So all of these things sort of started feeling like a relic of the past because Binance had this air of legitimacy that lasted for a long time and I may still continue. But what this shows me is that those problems are not over for unregulated international exchanges and may never be. If Binance can't do it in a way that's stable, then nobody can, because I don't think you could ask for an organization that's more, professional on an operational level than Binance, but their regulatory situation is no different from, I don't know, name your Huobi's or OKX's or whatever. They're always going to have these banking issues, it seems. And so I think that when you look at that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, you look at the growth of DEXs, I have to say it's not a good outlook for Binance or for any centralized exchange that is unregulated in general. I'm not going to make any bold projections here, but it's certainly negative pressure in a big way.
I think the interesting thing
Zack?
here, we're talking about US dollar withdrawals, and there's obviously sort of this interesting bifurcation of Binance proper, and then Binance US, which is the US affiliate that licenses some technology, but is otherwise and ostensibly not related to the parent company. There was a statement that came out in the afternoon from Silvergate that stated specifically that Binance US was a member in good standing with Silvergate.
Yeah.
So this is clearly about sort of the global outpost rather than the U.S. Licensee, which is now helmed by former OCC chief Brian Brooks. So also the potential, we've been seeing sort of cracks between these two wings of Binance. Obviously, Binance Global is a much larger operation, but there's starting to become a little bit of daylight between Binance US and Binance that we hadn't necessarily seen previously. Jen, I sorry to have interrupted you there, but please take it away.
No, that's all right. I was just going to ask for clarity on the Binance and Binance US thing, so you just kind of read my mind. Can you give us the TLDR on what's going on with the DOJ? I know that Binance is under investigation, but it's kind of unclear what they're being investigated for. Is this like another anti-money laundering situation?
It's very unclear at this point. We know that no wrongdoing is alleged at this point on behalf of U.S. authorities. We just know based on the report that there may indeed be an investigation ongoing. A couple of reporters here at CoinDesk are kicking the tires and trying to find some sources who may be able to shed more light on the situation. But right now it's quite fuzzy. We don't really know the scope or the state of this investigation. And time will tell when this gets announced how big or how small this may be. Brady, I saw your hand up. Quickly, what are your thoughts?
Well, it makes me think of something that Curve founder Michael Egorov said to me a little while back about centralized exchanges. People are freaked out about DeFi because it's sort of uncontrolled, it exists on Ethereum World Computer. But Egorov was like, look, you can see all the transactions. There's a lot of transparency there. The truth is there's no greater coin mixer than a centralized exchange. And I wonder if maybe that could be a part of what's really going on.
I would also point out that
comes of it.
I would also point out that these actions can sometimes be focused on things that happened what feels like a long time ago. And we do know that Binance, for a long period of time, was doing at best an inadequate job of stopping US users from getting on the platform. And so they could just be looking back at those things, and it might just be they're issuing a fine or something regarding those problems.
We will be watching it closely, but we're going to take a break here on The Hash. When we get back from the break, we're going to talk about those CryptoPunks. Those CryptoPunks are back in the news. I'm being told one sold for $11.8 million. Is that real? That's crazy. So we'll talk about CryptoPunks after the break. And stick with us. It's The Hash. Happy Friday. See you.
Are we talking? Oh, we're going to me instead of the NFTs. Okay. So we are looking today. The big story of the week, probably of the month, probably of the year, is El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender. In the wake of that, we have seen some signals of resistance from the IMF. They are saying they're taking a close look at this. There are some implications for international banking, tax, and other issues. But I also am very attentive to the undertone here, which may indicate that the IMF is feeling its control threatened. For those who aren't familiar, the IMF does loans for developing countries, especially during economic crises, and they often impose some pretty strict demands on the countries receiving their loans. El Salvador is seeking a $1 billion package from the IMF, and they're going to be meeting soon to discuss the Bitcoin declaration with El Salvador's president. So I have a column that actually just dropped. So if you're watching this live, you can go on Twitter and see it, about the international politics implications of the Bitcoin adoption. And this is one of the big ones, that it gives countries access to finance that is not mediated through institutions like the IMF, that is completely dominated by America, Europe, and other developed nations. So I guess I'll just open it up. I don't know if other people have thoughts about the big picture here. Brady, go for it.
I think the IMF is playing, I'm going to say his name wrong, I think, but Bukele's, I think they're playing right into Bukele's hands. I mean, this guy is a very media savvy young leader. I think I have no doubts that he actually does believe in Bitcoin, but I think to no small degree, this move was his bid to enter the world stage. And now he gets to throw down with the IMF. Like, this is like, he got to build his own little Streisand effect here, like, perfect move. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what I think is going on. I think this was pretty silly on the IMF's part because they just gave him exactly what he wanted.
Yeah. And to put it in context and scale, the loan that they're seeking is $1 billion, $1 billion, a tiny $1 billion. And if you look at, we saw the DeFi charts just a second ago. TVL on DeFi is what, 60 billion? I'm going to just put something crazy out there. Let's create a DeFi lending facility for El Salvador, let them tell the IMF to go pound sand. And that will be an extra big step forward in, the media play that you're talking about. That, I think, would be very interesting.
And they might be able to, as I was talking to a friend yesterday who is both very into Bitcoin and very into volcanoes, interestingly. And, she was talking about the volcano Bitcoin mining. And she was saying how exciting it is because she made the point, and this is a good point, that there's a lot of power in volcanoes. But the truth is, people don't get this. Electricity is hard to move around. You lose a lot of it the further it goes. But if you turn it into Bitcoin, it becomes really easy to move around. So it could be they put a bunch of ASICs up on those volcanoes and they get $1 billion fairly quickly, So that's another possibility.
Absolutely. Interesting. Yeah. And we're getting a little bit off the IMF here, but just on the volcano thing, again, I'm going to say that Bukele needs to talk to Elon and Saylor's Mining Council so that they can get that green certification program going. And I think that this is also from an adoption perspective, people have been talking about, are other countries going to follow in the foot of El Salvador? And I think that if Bukele really plays this right and gets the message out there that this is a way for countries in the global south, developing countries, to become more independent of the international finance system, that is going to be a bigger driver of adoption than anything having to do with getting Bitcoin entrepreneurs or investors to move to the country and do those sort of inflows that I think people have been focused on so far. Sure, there are some immediate economic benefits, but systemically, it's much more radical.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how education in crypto is going to increase in Latin America after this news. I know we said yesterday, it seems like every day there's something else happening in El Salvador. And I think when it comes to education, it's going to be a really, really great thing for Latin America. But coming back to the IMF side of things, I know the IMF has voiced concerns over what's happening in El Salvador, and that's no surprise here. But what can actually happen next? Can the IMF actually influence anything that's happening in terms of Bitcoin being used as legal tender there, or are these just concerns?
Well, this is kind of I kind of left out an important part of the picture here, which is that the IMF uses its loans essentially as leverage to get political concessions from countries. So most recently in Ecuador, they issued a $4 billion loan. As a condition of that loan, they required privatization of a ton of industries in the country. They stripped worker protections, and they demanded a 6% reduction in the budget, which they knew in advance was going to trigger a recession. The IMF is essentially a vehicle for, bullying of poor countries by rich countries. When those countries need money, they're in a desperate situation. Ecuador was in a bad recession in 2019 when they worked this out. The IMF uses that to extract concessions that create a political and economic environment that's better for rich countries, for example, to allow corporations to come in and do business in any way they see fit. So, this is, I think, the long game for Bukele. And when it comes to Bitcoin, they could theoretically use the same strategy to enforce some sort of Bitcoin ban or something like that. So, they do have leverage in certain situations. They've used it a lot in negative ways. And Bukele, I'm sure, is well aware of that. I think I have a throw that I missed there.
I think it's time to move on to the NFT world. So I'll take us on over to Sotheby's. All right. So rare CryptoPunk, you can see it on the screen there, sold for $11.8 million at a Sotheby's auction yesterday. So this is CryptoPunk 7523, and it's a sought after alien variety. He's wearing a medical mask, feels very fitting with the times. And the art specialist at Sotheby's, Michael Buchana, said that the sale demonstrates the strong demand that is still prevalent in the NFT world for these digital art collectibles. So I know we've been speaking a lot over the past 2 months about NFTs being in a bubble. How long is this going to go on for? Now we see this CryptoPunk sell for $11.8 million. What does this tell you guys about the NFT space? I'm going to kick to you first.
Can I get this one? Okay. So the way I'll frame this is that quote from a Sotheby's guy is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. When you sell a Picasso,
that's why I put it there. I was like, this is going to tee something up.
When you sell a Picasso for $500 million, do you say, oh, this demonstrates the demand for paintings? No, absolutely not. CryptoPunks are the original NFT, if I'm not mistaken, or at least the first line of them. And they reflect a real grassroots, sort of honest approach that was based on an interest in the technology at the time. Nobody cared about this stuff when they came out. I'm sure everybody on this panel is just beating themselves over the head for not having bought these when they were $100 a piece. It's just not the same as, Paris Hilton's going to pump out an NFT. And because this CryptoPunk sold for $11 million, there's going to be demand for that thing. It's art. It's non-fungible, right? It's in the name. They're not the same.
I'm with you on that one. I'm actually really interested that this fetched so much. I was asking someone early on, and so the NFT craze, what's driving this? And it was just like, well, it's a spillover effect of the crypto markets, right? There's a lot of excess wealth in the crypto markets right now. So for this to happen after this major drawdown, I think is actually pretty interesting. The fact that a CryptoPunk was able to fetch this much at auction seems, I don't know, a bit surprising to me. I know we've seen 69 million for people. I forget the last. There was another one. I forget the size of that one. But the fact that this sold for 11.8, it's really quite interesting to me that they're still valuing these rare pixels. It is kind of fortuitous that it had a medical mask on. That's a bit weird. It's very. It sort of speaks to the moment in a strange. Like Nostradamus type way. That's kind of crazy for CryptoPunk lore. But yeah, I'm always very curious about these spends. I wonder if these are, and David, I think it goes to your point, right? This is a marketing spend on behalf of the NFT sector itself, right? So, and that's even the spin that Sotheby's is presenting here, right? So if I'm I'm a crypto whale, I have a ton of ether.
Okay.
Yeah, spin, right? So maybe I'm saying, okay, this is my marketing spend for the sector writ large. And that's the thing I'm always wondering about. Like, do people really value these as art? And I think some people certainly do. But at these high price tags, I'm always wondering if that's sort of the calculus behind the scenes. I'll toss this to you, Brady. I know you've done a lot of reporting on CryptoPunks, stretching back a number of years now. Yeah, what's your take?
Well, I have a friend who fortuitously bought a bunch of these years ago, and his family is now set for life. So that is pretty cool for that guy, and he hasn't even sold all of them. So yeah, go him. Here's my hot take on CryptoPunks, and this very much squares with what David was saying. I'm going to contend that an individual CryptoPunk is not the work of art. The work of art is all 10,000 together, that it's a fractionalized art piece that demonstrates the power of programmatic art. And I think that, and the fact that it was done on the blockchain is powerful. I think these will be interesting to people for a long time. I was hanging out with an art guy this weekend, and he was like, well, do you think people will care about CryptoPunks in 1,000 years? And I was like, bro, I don't know if there'll be humans in 1,000 years, but I think for a long time, they are going to matter. And I think this is an important work.
Yeah, I mean, it's a piece of history. Sorry, Jen, go ahead.
Go for it. No, finish your thought.
Yeah, just to sort of emphasize again that there are differences between pieces of art, right? Like based on not just their aesthetics, but their historical sort of import. And in this case, it's definitely history that you're buying. And so if you're an investor, for example, take this seriously. There is a huge difference between something that is positioned in a larger discourse and just something that's coined by some famous person. But Jen, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say what was interesting to me is every time we talk about NFTs on this show, we kind of head off into the metaverse. And it seems like Sotheby's is really going all in on this metaverse idea. So they actually have a digital replica of their London building in Decentraland where you can kind of walk through with your avatar and take a look at all of the digital pieces on their walls. And I thought that was quite interesting and a nice extension to what's been happening at their auctions. And I know I ask this question all the time, but David and Brady, you guys are new, so I'd love to hear your opinions. What are your thoughts when you hear about really traditional art houses like Sotheby's playing in Decentraland? Like, what does that tell you guys?
I think it's always cool when people are willing to be experimental, so go them. Way to test out innovation.
I got a fresh pitch in the email inbox from Sotheby's today. They're doing punks on paper. That's the next thing. They're going to print out 5 punks and they're going to auction punks on paper. So they're going for, I don't know, some sort of statement about the digital, physical intersection.
With the private key on there? Will the private key be on it? Is that the idea? It's like a wallet for a punk?
I'd have to ask them. But
Okay.
no, they're going to print out some rare punks, number 6347, number 770, number 872, number 1819, and number 2830. And they're gonna mount them on real life paper. You can stick them on your Realverse walls instead of your Metaverse walls this time. So yeah, they still are trying to milk this NFT thing for all it's worth over at Sotheby's. More power to them. It's gonna be interesting.
There's a lot of rare analog punks in crypto.
Yeah, I mean that certainly is the top level takeaway is that they can make money. They're interested in making money, but that's kind of the trick that crypto is designed to pull, right? You get people interested because they're able to make money, but then there are other implications, and the metaverse is a great example. Who knows whether it's going to totally play out, but certainly virtual goods are here to stay, and art is one of them.
And the hash is here to wrap it up for the day, but we are here to stay in future days. We're going to shut it down for the Friday edition. Thanks so much. The Fearsome Four was here today. Jen, David, Brady, me, Zack. I think that's 4. Did I get everyone? That was the hash. We just did it. We just hashed it out. We just hashed it out Friday edition. So y'all go have a great weekend. We'll be back here on Monday to talk about some more crypto news. And until then, read CoinDesk. It's great. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Peace.